Thank you very much, my brother Barack Okwaro Maina Muluka, Dr. Barack Maina Okwaro Muluka. I will, as they say in West Africa, stand on the protocols already established. But it would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the Vice Chancellor, Professor Gudu, and the senior administrators and senior academics, and the students who are here present, and other friends of goodwill who are watching via technology. My good friend, Dr. Muluka, has already spoken to the subject. In Kiswahili, they would say, tayari amechokoza hoja, amechokoza hoja. The subject that we are asked to speak about this morning is one that is weighty. The words with which we are confronted are foreign. Whenever I have the opportunity, like I do this morning, to speak about the subject of democracy, I ask, what is the equivalent word of democracy in your mother tongue? And many times you discover that there is no equivalent. And that even in Kiswahili, we do what we call kutohoa. We say demokrasia, tuna Kiswahilisha democracy, which means there is a form of governance as defined and conceptualized by the former colonizers is different. But that does not mean that we did not know governance. We knew governance. We knew governance in different ways. Those forms of governance may not have been popularly elected, but in many places they were accepted or acceptable. If you talk to the Baganda of Uganda, even up till today, they believe that the Kabaka is their supreme ruler. If you talk to the Yoruba of Nigeria, they still believe that the Oni of Ife is their ruler. If you talk to the Asante, they still believe that the Asante Hen is their ruler. And that can be applied to many societies in Africa. But we must always remember that our governance systems were rudely interrupted. It started in earnest through what appeared like innocent engagements. And those of you who will have the opportunity of reading seasoned African researchers such as Senegal's Cheikh Anta Diop will be reminded that in the western part of Africa, we traded with the Portuguese and the Spaniards. That there was a system when there were governance systems. We remind ourselves of Sondiata Keita, the Epic of Mali, and the Mandian Charter of the year 1376, which was earlier than the French Revolution, which was earlier than the instruments of human rights that we today talk about. We are reminded of the pilgrimage of Mansa Musa to Mecca and how he changed the world economy with the gold that he carried to Mecca. In fact, today, commentators say that on the basis of all calculation, Mansa Musa remains the richest man who ever lived. That was in the continent of Africa. Then slavery changed everything. But there was resistance against foreign governance. You remember the Amazon women in what we now call Benin, which was known as Dahomey. You'll remember the rebellions, the great Queen Zinga of the Ndongo and Matamba of what is present-day Angola. You'll remember the Hehe rebellion, the Maji Maji rebellion, the rebellion of King Chaka of the Zulu, the Mau Mau uprisings. Africans resisted domination, but ultimately in 1884 and 1885 in Berlin, the continent was divided in the spheres that we now know amongst the European powers, and new governance systems were introduced. The Portuguese, the French, the Italians, the English, and in the Congo Free State, one person, King Leopold of the Belgians, controlled what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, a land larger than the entire Western Europe as we know it, until, of course, he handed it over to the Belgians. We then started the struggle to regain our independence. And when we regained, some say gained our independence, what happened is that we were never the same again. The only country that was never colonized was what we now call Ethiopia. And on the 28th day of February, which is only a few days away, they'll be celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Adwa, when the Ethiopians defeated the Italians. Liberia was created for freed slaves. And we know that Monroe even named the city of Monrovia after himself. So we started regaining independence with Egypt in 1922. Later Sudan in 1956. And later Ghana on the 6th day of March 1957. The struggle in what you now call the Global South for governance and dignity is one that was pioneered by young people, some of them younger than yourselves. When today we talk about the Pan-African movement, very few of us remember that it was Trinidad and Tobago's Sylvester Williams who brought the idea of a Pan-African movement to bring governance that would restore dignity to the people or the peoples of Africa, both in the mother continent and in the diaspora. The very first meetings were held in the early parts of the 19th century, but ultimately the most iconic meeting that we remember is the 1945 meeting in Manchester, which was attended for the first time by Africans from the continent with Kwame Nkrumah, Kamuzu Hastings Banda of the then Nyasaland, Obafemi Awolowo of Nigeria, and of course, Kenya's Jomo Kenyatta. At that time, the idea was independence. But the idea of independence had already started. In 1906, on the 5th day of April 1906, at the University of Columbia, a young South African delivered a speech which I commend to all of you. The regeneration of Africa. Pixley Kaisaka Seme. He then was one of the founding fathers, together with John Dube and Gumede of the African National Congress in 1912 in South Africa. And that remains the ruling party in South Africa. He was reminding us that we must be in charge of our affairs. And why he is important is because he was young. They were in their 20s. Young Africans were active. And if you look at the entire struggle for independence in the continent of Africa, there were young people. All of them, or most of them, were in their 20s. Even those who later became what they became, bad individuals, spoke about the dignity of the continent of Africa. The word they used was self-governance. The African had been humiliated, had been dominated. We were restoring dignity. There was calabar. There was discrimination based on color and gender. And in those early days, even the ones who had not gone to school, what we would call properly, were as eloquent as they were convincing. Across the continent of Africa, and you students of history, I commend to you to look at them, listen to them. Leopold Sédar Senghor of Senegal, young, he became not only an intellectual, but the first president of Senegal. Amilcar Cabral of Guinea-Bissau and Cabo Verde, young, in his 20s. Read what he wrote. Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea barely went into high school, but was able to tell the French, I prefer to live in dignity in my poverty rather than to be undignified in riches controlled by the French. Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria, young. Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, young. Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, the man for whom I am named, Patrice Emery Lumumba, Julius Kambarage, I've already said, Thomas Joseph Mboya here in Kenya, Haile Selassie, Kenneth David Kaunda, Hastings Kamuzuban. Down south, I've already talked about Pixley Kaisaka Seme, Walter Sisulu, ladies such as Albertina Sisulu, and later Winnie Madikizela Mandela. You go to what is now Namibia, the older ones will remember Sam Nujoma, Andimba Haman Toivo Ya Toivo. Angola, those of you who are here in Kenya in the 1975 will remember when they came here for peacemaking. The great Agostinho Neto, whose poems you must read. Holden Roberto, Jonas Malheiro Savimbi, Samora Moises Machel. You will remember all of them. These were young people, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, Joshua Nkomo, young Africans who believed that we could change the continent of Africa. But yet, one African American had seen it all. John Henry Clark said that when all African countries regained their independence, each one of them, without exception, inherited a form of governance which they inherited from their colonizers, and none of them will ever succeed on the basis of those systems. As I speak to you today, since Ghana regained her independence, there have been 200 attempted coup d'etats in Africa. 106 of them have led to change of government, which tells you that there is a crisis in governance, which calls into question this thing we call democracy. What is it? What animal is it? That we sing her praises, yet it threatens our nations. As I speak to you now, there is war in Sudan, courtesy of attempted democracy. Chad yesterday closed its boundaries with Sudan. It's the highest number of displaced persons in the world since the World War II. Sudan is in a crisis. As I speak to you now, in southern Cameroon, in Ambazonia, there was an election in which the president, who is a dotard at 92 years of age, having been told that he won the election, he says, "Which election did I win?" He does not even know that there was an election. Children have not gone to school in southern Cameroon for the last 3 years. As I speak to you now in the Democratic Republic of Congo, children have not gone to school. Women have been raped. That is the state of your continent, grappling with democracy, bequeathed to us by the colonizers. My good friend, Dr. Barak Muluka, told you that those who conceptualize democracy thought about the people's consent, and he told you about the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia. We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are born equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that it is for this reason that governments are instituted amongst men. Those are the iconic words of the American Declaration of Independence. Consent of the people. But why is it, therefore, if consent of the people is measured through the electoral process, why is it that when the purportedly elected government in Gabon was overthrown by Oligui, the people were celebrating in the streets if there was a consent? Why is it that when Dumbuya overthrew Alpha Conde in Guinea, there was celebration? Why is it that when Atimi Goita took the government by force of arms in Mali, there were celebrations? Why is it that when Achani took over the government in Niger, there were celebrations? Why is it that when Traore took over the government in Burkina, there were celebrations? Why is it that even when the AU in the year 2014 said in Malabo, in the year 2014 said that unconstitutional change of government will not be tolerated, we are embracing and celebrating unconstitutional changes of government? What has happened to the thing that you call democracy? Why is it that in this very country that is ours since 1982, when we restored what we call democracy and multi-party election, after every election cycle, since 1992, 1997, 2002, 2013, 2017, 2022. After every election, the country is threatened with disintegration along ethnic lines. Why? There must be a problem with this thing we call democracy. And it's not only in the continent of Africa, because we are talking about the global south. It appears to be a problem in Latin America. Whether you are talking about El Salvador, or you are talking about Nicaragua, or you are talking about Venezuela, there is a problem. Why is it? Why is it that the young people who constituted the positive changes of the 1960s are now being used differently? It is Nigeria's Wole Soyinka who says that it amazes him that in the continent of Africa, young people congregate and cheer the very people who steal from them. Today, we live in a country whose greatest claim to fame is that it is led by kleptocrats, thieves. We live in a country today whose greatest claim to fame, it is led by kakistocrats, our very worst. We live in a country where we are led by ethnocrats who appeal to the primordial ethnic sensibilities of the population. Today, in our country, there is dog whistling. Political leaders, I use the word leaders very loosely, are telling people that in the run-up to the elections in this country, they had better go to the Aboriginal homes or they'll see. And they saw in the year 2007 and 2008. Why? And young people are cheering them on. You know, many times when I occasionally watch local television, read local newspapers, and it is a Thursday, and I see the political players thumping their chests in Kenya, how popular they are, because their rally was bigger than the other one. I ask myself, don't they know that that is a statement of the state of unemployment in the country? That during a weekday, young people can come and assemble in the tens of thousands. You should be a sense of shame. But they celebrate. As my good friend said in Kiswahili, Kenya ni ngawira. Ngawira are war spoils. Kenya is divided. Some have the neck, some have the abdomen, some have the legs. And even the poorest who has not had a meal celebrates that one from their tribe is in cabinet, as if it ever mattered. That is the state of democracy in our country. And you young people, many of you are co-authors of this tragedy. Nyerere, whom I quote often, said in 1967 and later in 1995, siri ya maendeleo ni watu, ardhi, siasa safi, vijana wenye malezi bora, siha njema na bongo kali. That is the recipe for development, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere said. And in our lifetime, courtesy of his love for his country, he succeeded in putting together 126 plus ethnic groups to think like one nation. Tanzanian will never ask you whether you are Msukuma or Mnyamwezi. They'll ask you wewe ni wa Chama cha Mapinduzi, wa Chadema, au wa CUF, au wa ACT Wazalendo. Kenya, Amulembe nation. Murima, Mutaro, Oduadu. And Nyerere posed, how can we in the 21st century still be talking about tribe as the basis for decision making in the 21st century? In 1975, Samora Machel, he was just slightly over 30, said, in a multi-ethnic nation, for the new nation to thrive, the tribe must die and must only exist for cultural values, not for purposes of decision making. Today, in our country, when you go for an interview, they ask you to fill papers, and they ask what your tribe is. And you are being hired as a professor. They ask what your tribe is. You are being recruited as an ambassador in a foreign nation, and they ask what your tribe is. When you take a matatu from Rongo to Kisumu, do you ever ask the tribe of the driver? When you are flying to Europe and America, do you ever ask the tribe of the pilot? When you go to the hospital, do you ever ask the tribe of the doctor? You simply want a good doctor. Deng Xiaoping once said in 1980, it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches the mice. In Kenya, we want to know the color of the rat or the cat. How can we grow? And the reason why the global south is suffering is because of that. You know, as a student of history, I sometimes listen to our politicians. It's an exercise in pain to listen to them. It is painful. It is painful because they say with their mouths what they do not believe in their hearts. When they have a podium like this and they are reading speeches that have been written for them, they sound good. But when they go to funerals in their rural homes and they are speaking in their mother tongue, it is sad and painful to listen to them. And I often look at our country like I look at most. And I look at Haiti. And during our own lifetime, there was a man called Jean-Claude Duvalier, or Francois Duvalier, Papa Doc. He was succeeded by his son, Baby Doc, Jean-Claude Duvalier. He was a medical doctor. When he came, he seized the power. He started dabbling in witchcraft. And after that, he formed a group of goons. Goonism did not start in Kenya. He called them the Tonton Makut. As I speak to you now, a contingent of the Kenyan police is in Haiti. 90% of the capital of Haiti, Port-au-Prince, is controlled by goons. The original sin was sown by the Duvaliers forming goons. In Kenya today, you can hire goons to be physically present at a rally so that your ideas are not projected. And if democracy was a competition of ideas, there is no competition. Today, you can also hire online goons called bloggers. So goonism has migrated from the political rally site onto the keyboard. They wake up with only one agenda: to deploy all the insults ever invented by man directed at their target. They create images of you in a state of nature and circulate them to the unsuspecting world. And as the saying goes, lies often take the lift, the truth takes stairs. That is the situation in which we find ourselves in this country. The youth must therefore ask the question: if the global south is to have a new system of governance, what must we do? This is the question that we are asking. This is the question that we are bringing to you who are the intelligentsia. Because you are in a totally different space. You are being exposed to knowledge. What will you use that knowledge for? In the great Hindu epic, the Mahabharata, the greatest and longest poem ever written by man, 11 times longer than the Christian Bible, 3 times longer than Iliad and Odyssey by Homer, written 5,000 years before the Christian Bible. Sage Via says that education is that which changes you inside out. If education does not change you inside out, it is no more than the clothes that you wear in the morning and remove in the evening. You young people, how is education changing you inside out? What are the moral anchors? And I hope in this university there are no organizations such as Luo Students Association. I pray they are not. I hope that in this university there is no Kisi Student Association. I hope that there is no Kikuyu Student Association here. But I hope that there is an association of sociology students, an association of students of mass communication. That is what Africa needs, people who are organized around knowledge, not about primordial ethnic affinities. Because Africa and the global south will never grow until we are able to liberate ourselves from these primordial ethnic instincts. We talk about the global south, which includes China, which includes India, which includes Brazil, which includes Indonesia, which includes Argentina. The African continent is the youngest continent on earth today, 1.4 billion and counting. The average age, depending on whoever is doing the statistics, is between 18 and 20, the youngest. Over 75% of the African population is below the age of 35. And yet our GDP, gross domestic product, all of us, is no more than 3 trillion. It is smaller than the GDP of the Federal Republic of Germany, with a population of only 80 million and a GDP of anything between 5 and 6 trillion United States dollars. The Singapore that we want to go to, which we'll never go to, has only a population of 6.1 million. Is 773 square kilometers. We are 582,000 square kilometers, a population of about 55 million, a GDP, give or take, of 140 to 147 billion United States dollars. Singapore, 560 billion United States dollars. They respect the law. When you see them driving in the streets of Singapore, they respect street lights. Street lights are not there for decoration. When you spit or you chew gum and you drop it, you pay a fine in Singapore. Salaries are paid on time. When you steal, you are punished. In our country and most of the third world in Africa, when you steal, we give you a national honor and we appoint you into cabinet. How can we dare say we are going to Singapore when we are doing the wrong things? And it is you who must change. Some of you here belong to the Roman Catholic Church. And I want you to read an order that I have clicked attention on, the Benedictine order. When a priest is being ordained, they prostrate on the ground. And in Latin, they say conversatio morum. It is a complete change of heart. You become a new being. We must become new beings. We must say that we have sinned and fallen short of the glory of both God and man. We must exorcise the ghost of theft which resides in us. We must exorcise the ghost of negative ethnicity which resides in us. Koigi wa Mwere, whom Barack Okwarumaina Muluka has published in his book Toward Genocide in Kenya, The Curse of Negative Ethnicity, warns us that we have tempted God for too long. Our cup of iniquity is getting full. Nations don't collapse dramatically. They collapse when you least expect it. We must change. And how do we change? We change by doing things differently, by taking a solemn vow. You know, many times when I read the Christian Bible, and I read it often, I read certain verses, and I read them keenly. There is one that African politicians love, that all leadership comes from God. Nonsense. Nonsense on stilts. Some leaders are punishment from God. You have sinned so much by making the wrong decision that God sent as a punishment. And those of you who are Christians, I also want you, whenever you are reading that, because during this period, they are going to come with the tithes and offerings and look as holy as the angel Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel combined. Tell them there is also another verse in the book of the prophet Hosea, at chapter 8, verses 4. You can fact check me. Says, you have raised among yourselves leaders and kings whom I have not appointed. Let us change. You young people can change it. You can only change it if you take a solemn vow. You must be sacrificial about it. You must ask yourself, why do you elect people into office? Are they going to fight corruption? Or they are going to engage in primitive accumulation of things? You know, many people in Kenya say there is Roho Mtakatifu. No, the Roho in Kenya is Roho Mtakakitu. In fact, it's the Roho Mtakavitu. That is the spirit that is alive in Kenya, even in churches. Even in churches. And don't tell me that in churches it's not there. Go and read the book of Matthew, at chapter 24, verses 24. There shall come many Christs, and they shall work wonders. And if it were possible, they shall confuse even the very elect, if the days were not shortened. I'm submitting to you that these are those days. There are many Christs roaming around the world, calling themselves apostles, prophets, and many other things. Yet you and me know that in the Jewish tradition, the last prophet was Malachi. In the Christian tradition, the last prophet was John the Baptist. There are no more prophets, only disciples. So all these quacks you hear calling themselves prophets say, "You'll not be cheated, I'm a Christian of Berea who asks." So those of you who are Christians here, if you want to give it a spiritual dimension, in order to change the crisis of governance in the global south, read the Bible a lot more keenly. Those of you, and I'm sure there are Muslims here. Do we have Muslims in the assembly? Ramadan Kareem. And if there are Muslims, I want you to also read the Quran. And I want you to read leadership in the Quran. When the Prophet died, the person who should have been the first of the Rashidin to take over from him was Ali. Ali allowed Omar to take over. When Omar died, once again he was told, "Fight for this thing." He said, "No, for the sake of the Muslim Ummah, I'll allow Abu Bakr." When Abu Bakr died, he was said, "Take it again." He said, "For the sake of the Muslim Ummah, I'll allow Uthman to take over." He became the fourth caliph. And after him, the Swahili word fitina comes from the Arabic word fitna. And if you read Islamic history, you'll read about the wars of the fitnas. And that is how you now have the Sunni, the Shia. And the Prophet himself is on record as saying that before the return of Isa bin Maryam, who is Jesus Christ, there shall be 73 sects of Islam, of which only one will be the true one. Even if you are a Muslim, leadership is about consent, is about the people. What are we doing in agriculture? The leaders that come here and tell you whether it is 1 term or 2 term, that cannot be a basis for governance. It is what they want to do in agriculture. You have agriculture here. Your teachers of agriculture will tell you, we consume as Kenyans 9 billion eggs every year. 9 billion. We only produce 5 billion. Are the leaders telling you how we are going to produce the next 4 billion? Or they see it as an opportunity to import things that look like eggs from China? We live next to the lake here and we are importing fish from China. And you go to Kisumu and they tell you, "Nyar China met kochiel." The daughter of China is nice when it is fried. How can we possibly be importing fish from China? We are destroying our lake through cage farming, which is uncontrolled. It is acceptable, but it must be controlled. Are they talking about that? This is the sugar belt. When was the last time that the sugar farmers were properly paid? Yet they are importing sugar with mercury from Brazil, and we are consuming poison on a daily basis. Rice, we are importing, and our arrow is dying. Are they telling you that? These are the questions that you young people In fact, I wish that young people would tell the current political class, we are no longer interested in political rallies in open field. We want town hall meetings where we interrogate what you are telling us. That is the only time. Recently, I watched the elections in Japan. No political rallies. They were campaigning via television and social media. The number of registered voters in Japan is over 100 million, with over 500 electoral seats. Within 7 hours, the winner was known. Within 7 hours. In Kenya, people assemble at the Bomas of Kenya from 34C or B or A. We are still waiting for Tharaka Nithi. 2 weeks down the line, people start declaring themselves winners. And when one is ultimately elected, you doubt whether he or she won at all. And our votes are no more than 22 million. We can't even count when it comes to voting. The time is now. Somebody sent me a message. I was away in Lusaka, Zambia on that day. And he sent me an image of the rallies that were taking on. One in Kakamega, one somewhere in Siaya, and another one in Nairobi. He thought I would be impressed. I said, I am not impressed. I am not impressed because I want to know the issues that were raised. Because what I see happening here is just thumping. Bullies trying to demonstrate to each other who is the better bully. And I told him, if you never know and you have ever seen how a country produces refugees, this is how it begins. This is how it begins. This is how it began in Sudan. When a group of people are intolerant to ideas by the young people, it is the duty of young people to be revolutionaries in their youth, to question. And when they question, you do not fight them, you call them into an agora and privately and talk to them so that you are moved not by force but by the force of reason. Today, it is force, not force of reason. And let me tell you, history is consistent. And Fidel Castro once said it before he raided the government of Batista in Cuba. It is the duty of the young people to knock the door, because history has demonstrated that there is a crop of old people, not all of them, who once they have assumed and acquired the taste of power, removing them and separating them from the seat of power is like tearing the sun from the skies. In Kenya, there are such as those. Yesterday, as I draw to the conclusion, I was telling young people that the problem largely in the global south is that when you get into power, it is not for service, it's to be served. Have you ever seen that a person whom you knew as an ordinary, gentle individual, if he is elected as an MCA or a member of parliament or a cabinet minister, he begins to forget many basic things. One of them is to open the door of his or her car. They no longer know how to open. It must be opened for them. They no longer know how to carry their phones. No, they can't. It's too heavy. It is carried for them by individuals called PA. They no longer know how to carry their handbags if they are lady. There is a man or a woman who walks behind them carrying that bag. They no longer can take water without being tasted because they think everybody tries to kill them. You treat them like gods. If one of them were to enter as I'm speaking, everybody would stand and he would be told, you are God's gift to us. The Lord has brought you. And if the front seats were full, you would see somebody moving close to one of the fellows and telling him, he has come, leave the seat. When you treat people in positions of service like demigods, sooner rather than later they think they are demigods. We must stop it. I want you to read Chinua Achebe's The Trouble with Nigeria. And he gives an example of what happened at one time when he was in Ireland. They were waiting for the Prime Minister of Ireland. And he thought that it was like in Africa, where before the Prime Minister comes, first of all, he comes late to disrupt affairs. And nowadays what they do is they hire a helicopter so that as they are arriving, all the tents are flying in the air. Meanwhile, they have come 3 hours late. And before they arrive, they are wide-chested individuals who will come and looking menacingly from closed doors. And once they come, then you know they have come. In the Irish case, Chinua Achebe said, they sat everybody and a lone man walked in. And they said, the Prime Minister has arrived. We may now start. And he was dead on time. I look forward to those days. And those days can be brought back. My friend Barack Okwaro Maina and I have been accused by our enemies, known and unknown, that we live in a world called utopia, which is unreal. He will tell you at one time, when we thought that we had a contribution to make to this country, in the year 2006, we formed a political party. Historians don't remember that. Chama cha Uzalendo. We had many of our friends. We say, sisi ni wazalendo, patriots. You are talking issues. I visited him as he was campaigning in Huisero. We moved in Yala. And they were saying, Muluka tunataka pesa. They were not interested in ideas. I was in Kamukunji. I wrote a complete chapter with Sauti ya Kamukunji. The then representative of the World Bank, Bruce Willis, accompanied me and told the audience at a meeting that if you elect this man, we are going to convert this place where they are making sufurias into an industry. The head of the World Bank was with me. Somebody said, PLO anasema mambo ya industry. Sisi tunataka pesa sasa. The rest is history. Our votes were not enough. That is the crowd. And the person who was elected in my Kamukunji case did not campaign on a single date except the night before. And when I went to one of the polling stations, he had imported voters. That is the reality. Yet we wonder why our country is not growing. During that period, a friend of ours was contesting in Game constituency. And when he went there, they told him, we know what you want to tell us. We know already. Just give us the money. The electorate has become a bunch of mind readers. The only thing that moves them is money. They do not care how you acquire that money. So how do we change? Beyond lamentation, how do we change? We must change. And it is engagement such as this that will change. 30 years ago, as a young man, in 1994, I founded a foundation, the PLO Lumumba Foundation. Dr. Barak serves as one of our trustees because we said we are not just complaining. And as I speak to you now, we are in 50 African countries, 50 African countries, and 3 countries outside of the continent of Africa. And our greatest claim to fame, we have never asked anybody, no European NGO, to finance us. It is our little money that we use. So we are saying that you make a contribution. Beyond the rhetoric, you must do something. As I speak to you now, to demonstrate that it can be done through young people, one of our mentees, Usman Ture from the Gambia, has just arrived in Nairobi this morning. And what is he doing? And I want you to Google Sky Cosmetics. He's now perhaps one of the largest cosmetic companies in Africa, with outlets in the Gambia, in Senegal, in Lagos, Dubai, and he has come to Nairobi to set up one in Nairobi and in Kampala in Uganda. Doing things economically. As I speak to you now, we are also organizing our thoughts because we don't just want to talk theory. 2 years ago, we started the first Pan-African Institute to talk about leadership at Lukenya University. My good friend Julius Selo Malema was with us. And only in the month of November, we also opened another one in Hargeisa in Somaliland. And 2 weeks ago, we opened the third one in Lusaka, Zambia. We are saying that it can be done. So we are liberating you. Stop thinking tribe. The tribe is only necessary for cultural purposes. Be a good Omogusi. I want you to be a good Omogusi. Be a good Kipsigis. Be a good Suba. Be a good Arekoyo. Be a good Kuria. Be a good Luo. Celebrate and write in your language and celebrate your culture. But let that be the recipe that we put together. If you are Bukusu or Muiswa, that is the recipe that we put together to make Africa great again. It can be done. It is our diversity that is our strength. We must do it. So today, when you leave here, I want you to go out, reflect, and ask yourself, what contribution can I make to my country? But start with your village. Barack Okwaro Maina Muluka here is now in the process of putting together what will be one of the leading personal libraries on African material. I've visited it in his home in Emmanuelia. That is the contribution you want to make. What are you doing? Between your birth certificate and your death certificate, what has happened here? Or you just were born and you died? These are the questions. And lastly, I want you to be men and women who remember these words. These were words spoken by John Fitzgerald Kennedy in 1960 or 61, on the occasion when he formed what we now know as the American Peace Corps movement, which some of you saw their teachers here in the 60s and the 70s. He said, a society that does not pay respect to its young men and women is a society adrift, a giant headed to the rocks. Let us not be such a society. And you young men, remember that the society is not a society that is only composed of young men and women. Youth is a stage. Baraka Mwinshehe Mwaruka has sung a song, Ujana ni Moshi. You are youth today, in the next few years, you'll not be youth. What will you be remembered for in your youthful days? Be courageous without being suicidal and reckless. I urge all of you today to begin doing what we did not do. Begin writing your personal journal on a daily basis. Live your life on the basis of a timetable, even if you don't keep it always. Have certain values that you cannot compromise. And because you claim to be Christians, I'm going to conclude with what is recorded in the book of Daniel. Daniel was in exile when he was age 17. The Israelites were in exile in Babylon. The king was Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible records that he took and selected some 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And that these Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had different names. He changed their names. And they did not object when he changed their names. Then he told them that I'm going to erect a God whom you shall worship, and anybody who does not worship this God shall be burnt in fire. Then it was reported to him that these young men were not worshiping the God. And the fire was lit 7 times over. And when he called the boys and told them what he was going to do, he said, we shall not worship any God other than the Lord God. And we know that he shall save us. But this to me is the most important thing. But even if he does not, and they entered the fire, and the king saw 4 men, and of one he said, he is like the gods. And this came out unscathed. The moral of my story is that people can call you any name. It doesn't change who you are. But when people want to take your principles, be prepared to die. Today, I'm asking you to be prepared to die for certain values, because it is when you are prepared to die that you begin to live. God bless you.
Great. Thank you. We may be seated. It's time to have a short interaction with our speakers. And we have about 30 minutes. I want to request us that if we give you an opportunity to raise a concern, ask a question, please make it short and let others also interact with the speakers. Yes, please. As our chief speaker takes a seat in front, I believe that we are here, Professor, we have the lecturers, we have students. I want to give much of the time to our students. I believe the students outside are also hearing me. I would request our public address system team to distribute the speakers microphones in the congregation. Yes, we have come with the regaining. We have regeneration. And we have an issue that we must be in charge as youth. And so I want 2 people from this row, 2 people from this row, 2 people from this row. Students, it's our time. One question only. Don't add, don't give us stories, because as many as we are, we should be able to interact. Somebody is at the back? Yes, you have a microphone, please talk. Could we have microphones? Ushers? Ask the microphone this side. There's a microphone this side. Microphones. Somebody at this side. Yes, gentlemen, near me. Great.
Good evening. Good afternoon, sorry. Prof, we thank you for your contribution to the Pan-African. So I have a question for you. If you are 22 currently, 22 years of age in Kenya, then without dynasty or financial capital, what ethnical and strategic path will you take to disrupt the structure without becoming part of the corruption you critique? Then also, but he has left in his book of House of Exile, thank you. He has talked about exile, internal exile. What about if he was supposed to say, negotiating space with imperfect institution governance, negotiating space with imperfect institution? Because yes, we are citizens, we have the right to vote, but it means that we're not in exile in real life. What if he had said it's a negotiating space and imperfect institution? Then I
said two, yeah. You are getting more, some people are getting...
Okay, then one thing just to finish. When you open this book, one of the things that you show is innovation. Through your Prof. PLO Foundation, and now we're starting for a law school. Maybe with some organization, you help us through that. Thank you.
Good. A lady this side. Okay, bring it inside. This side and the middle. Give this gentleman. Yes, take the mic. Make it short before... Go on.
Thank you for the opportunity. Prof, my question is this. What is the econometrics and analysis of politics, basically on the context of, that is in Kenya, and a democracy? We have the political business cycles, and opportunistic policies. These two entities have affected the country, both locally and internationally. So, through referencing the generational theory, how do we handle, what is the political or which indicator can we use to solve this issue of political, business, cycles, and opportunistic policies?
Great.
Thank you.
Can we give the mic to this gentleman with the necktie? Please help me.
It's good to say your name, please, and maybe school.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am Wanjala Jora. I pursue accountancy in Rongo University. I only have one question to Professor Patrick Lumumba and Barack Muluka. Will you please help us register our own party, the Gen Z's party?
Good. Can you bring the mic this side? I'm looking for the hand of a lady. There's a lady here. Please give the mics to them. Yes. There's one there and this one. Please start, and then the other one down there. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the chance. My question to Professor Lumumba head, Dr. Barak, just to ask, according to you, from the Kenyan recent Gen Z protest, did you saw it as a democratic awakening, or did you saw it as democratic instability? And again, is the state afraid of the Gen Z, or rather afraid of the youth or the young generation because of our awareness of the democratic instability, or is the state afraid of us because we are uncontrollable? Thank you.
Great. That lady.
My name is Okeo Rose. I am a political science and public administration student. I'm a finalist. My question goes directly to Professor P.L.O. Lumumba. And I'm asking this question out of naivety. Now, democracies are known to be derailed, or rather destroyed, through military coups or coup d'etats. But another way to destroy democracies is through the erosion of institutions. Recently, Traore abolished political parties, and political parties are key institutions when it comes to democratization of a country. And at the same time, political parties or other institutions are guardrails of democracy. So why is Traore abolishing these institutions if he promised to restore democracy in this country? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Prof.
Let us take that batch first. You know, sometimes, and as I grow older, perhaps not wiser, but a lot more inquisitive and a lot more skeptical, whenever somebody uses words, and I try to avoid using the word democracy many times, because as I asked at the very beginning, in your mother tongue, what is it? Or in Kiswahili, what is it? This idea of political parties, whose is it? Even Europe itself, when did the political party arise? Students of history will tell you when Europe was governed by constitutional and constitutional monarchs, absolute rulers. And there was a time when they killed all their monarchs from Sweden to Russia, ending with the 1917 killing of the Tsar of Russia. That is how you introduce the constitutional monarchs. It is with industrial revolution, when parties are now divided into classes in Europe, that you now begin to see the emergence of political parties as ideologically founded. Then you begin to hear that some parties are to the left, some are to the right, and some are to the center. If you ask in any of these Kenyan political parties, are you to the left or to the right or to the center? They'll tell you we are ODM, our base is in Luo Nyanza, we are Wiper, our base is in Ukambani, we are UDA, our base is in Kalenjin, we are the other one, CDCP, our base is where? In Murima. So our political parties are not ideologically founded. They are personality cults in certain cases. And when we were doing the Constitution, one of the things that we proposed in order to institutionalize political parties is to give them political parties fund. We thought that that would help them to create structures. And that has not happened. So the question that I want to ask you, are political parties a solution to the Kenyan or African problem? In the Democratic Republic of Congo, there are over 233 political parties. In Kenya, I believe there are over 60 now, and the ones waiting registration are possibly in their 30s. That is the first question that I want you to ask. I'm just giving you this so that you may think. In the 1960s and 70s, we thought that because of multiple ethnicities, we should have single parties. That is why we had KANU in Kenya, saying it was a single party. We had TANU and Afro-Shirazi in Tanzania, which became Chama cha Mapinduzi. We had MPLA in Angola. We had Frelimo in Mozambique. We had UNIP in Zambia. We had Mouvement Populaire in the Democratic Republic of Congo called Zaire. Then we discovered that all these single parties also became dictatorial. Then after Berlin in 1989, Western countries told us that democracy equals to 1, political parties, multi-party state, equals to 2, term limits, equals to 2, allowing NGOs and the civil society to thrive, equals to 2, economic rights and political rights, and we swallowed it line, hook, and sinker. Are we the better because of political parties? I want you to look at Kenya. Since we reintroduced multi-party politics in the 1990s, tell me, which political party or which presidential candidate has ever contested an election in the same political party in the succeeding election? None. Of all the major politicians, and I will not name some of them, but you know them, they have belonged to no less than 13 political formations in the last 20 years. 13 political formations. What is their fidelity to the party? The Chinese have only one political party called the Chinese Communist Party, and they call it democracy with a Chinese character. The Chinese political party is the largest political party in the world with 100 million members registered and paying every month. Not this membership which you claim by rally attendance. In Kenya alone, the Chinese political party has 50,000 members in Kenya. The question that I want to ask you, therefore, why is it, therefore, that when there are coup d'etats, people are beginning to celebrate like they celebrated in the 70s? Why is it that the administration in the Sahel region are becoming popular? Because people are disillusioned and they think that political parties stand in their way. Do I have an answer? No. I think that we must search for a form of governance which will be acceptable to the majority. Whether it will be led by political parties, I do not know, but I don't think so. Not on the basis of the evidence that I have. And that brings me to the question about Gen Zs. Forming political parties does not solve everything. I told you we formed one, Chama cha Uzalendo. It is still alive. Did it solve it? Why? Of course, you can't judge a political party within a short circle. Perhaps it can take years. ANC in South Africa has been alive since 1912. The question is this the time that we must ask ourselves? And today, one of them, I'm searching, and many of our friends are searching. Are there things in our traditional governance systems which, if we used, can help us? When we were doing the Constitution, Professor Ali Maruzurui wrote a paper and gave a presentation like this. If African politics are ethnic prone, can we make constitutions that are ethnic proof? Can we? In Switzerland, the governance system, there are 3 nationalities in Switzerland. The French, the Italians, the Germans, and the Romans. And the country, those of you who have visited, is governed on that basis. They have a confederal system with the capital in Bern. If I ask you the president of Switzerland is, you do not know, because they have what they call the presidency, which is rotation. But we are so many. If you listen to Kenyans, even when they are in political parties, the same political party, The same, which you think that what binds them is ideology. But within that same political party, people are still talking tribe. Our son, our daughter. It appears that the jury is still out as to whether the political party is the avenue. And I want to hear what my good friend Barack Muluka talks and says about this. The question of instability. Our nations, the post-independence African nation is still very young and unstable. The oldest post-independence country in sub-Saharan Africa, barring Egypt, which is 1922, and including Sudan, which is 70 years since she regained her independence in 1956, 70, Ghana 69. We are still grappling with many of these things. And they are both internal contradictions and external pressures. So we are unstable. We are navigating some of these things. It is our duty to be in a state of constant search. And I heard Dr. Muluka reminding you of the statement by Winston Churchill, where he said that democracy is not the best form of governance as he described it, but he has yet to find one that is better. He was talking about Western Europe and former colonies. Look at what is happening now in China. How are they governing themselves? He's a Chinese character. Look at Vietnam. Look at Laos. Look at Cambodia. Look at Thailand. Look at India. Look at Indonesia. It's not that they don't have problems. Is there something that we can do? I leave that answer with you. Coup d'etats. In 1963, Kwame Nkrumah was addressing an audience in Accra, Ghana, and he said that the military has no role in the political affairs of any nation. But should it become necessary for the military to intervene in the affairs of any nation because the political clash have squandered the mandate that they were given, the military should only get into that space for a short period for the purpose of restoring order and ensuring that power is restored to the people who have the people's mandate. That is how I understand the Sahel. The ballot had been abused in Guinea. The ballot had been abused in Niger. The ballot had been abused in Mali. The ballot had been abused in Burkina. And that is why I support those extraordinary changes of power as a medium measure to restore the country to normalcy. And you know that since that period, Traore has survived several assassination attempts and coup attempts, one as recent as Friday, last week. So it is not as easy as we think it is. And I don't want to answer all the questions in the knowledge that my good friend Barack Muluka will say some. But I want to comment just on two things. Involvement. In 1997, there was something called the IPPG. And I remember at that time, we were only 25 with my friend Nicholas Otieno and the late Okio Kombaka. And we created a movement called Modern, Movement for Dialogue and Nonviolence. We were animated at that time by Martin Luther King Jr. and Mohandas Gandhi. We made our contribution. Ultimately, there was the IPPG, and we make the claim, even if it is not true, that we made a contribution. We were only 25. You must strive to make a contribution. In 2007, when the country was almost going to war, we also made a contribution. And if you read the book written by the late Raila Odinga, whom I did not agree with on many issues, but to his credit, he mentions that our group are the ones who recommended the process that actually ultimately brought in Kofi Annan. You must always make a contribution. Barack Okwaro Maina Muluka will now deal with my heresies.
you know, in universities such as this, there are people who are called graduate assistants. The others who are called tutorial fellows. And when they teach, the professor sits at the back. And after they are finished, the professor comes to correct their heresies. What he's saying, I'm not capable of doing. I'm not capable of correcting his heresies, if any. But